All right, welcome back. Let's build upon our previous climate knowledge and get into climate regions. Okay, so the objectives for this unit are going to be to identify factors used to define climates and then describe the six main climate regions. And a lot of the vernacular or the words that we use for climate regions kind of changes throughout science. So we're going to use the six climate regions that Edgenuity provided for the quizzes and tests so that you don't get confused. All right, so how we classify climate. The two major classifiers are going to be precipitation and temperature. So that's a quiz question. Write that down or remember it. Temperature and precipitation, those are the two main climate classifiers. And then the last one is going to be vegetation. So what kind of plants are in that area determines the climate region classification as well. All right, so here's just a good display of the climate regions. Um, these are all pretty much what Edgenuity uses, so that's why I used this picture. But you can see that the climate zones, like the tropical zone from here to here, the temperate zone from here to here, and from here to here, and then the polar zone from here all the way up to the top, kind of correlates with different climate regions as well. So in the polar regions, you're going to get the tundras and the ice caps. In the tropical regions, you're going to get rainforests and savannas. And then the temperate regions, you're going to get temperate coniferous forests with these crazy winters and crazy summers. And then you also are going to get some like grasslands. So we'll get into the first climactic region. We've got tropical or tropical rainy. So we've got two different distinguishers for the tropical climate region, and that's going to be tropical wet, which is classified by rainforests. They're found near the equator. They have a lot of heat and a lot of heavy rainfall. So those rainforests are super good for biodiversity. But basically, tropical wet, you're going to think of like hot areas with a lot of heavy rainfall. So another little fun fact and quiz question, the only tropical wet climate region that we have in the United States is Hawaii. So remember that. And then we have tropical wet and dry. So typically you're going to be thinking about savannas, or they're also called tropical grasslands. And those are classified differently between tropical wet because they have rainy seasons and they have dry seasons. So when you think about tropical wet and dry, think about like the African savannas, how they have those rainy seasons and then dry seasons. Okay, so here's just a good view of the tropical wet climate regions across the world. You can see it just kind of goes straight across the equator in that tropical region. That dark blue is going to be that that tropical wet, and then the light blue is tropical wet and dry because they have dry seasons and rainy seasons. So that's right in there. Precipitation can exceed 200 centimeters. In some places, it exceeds 600 centimeters. So there's a lot of rain going on in those rainforests. They call them that for a reason. All right, so the second region is going to be the dry climates. So when you think of the dry climates, think of just like deserts, basically. There's two distinguishers for dry climates as well, but they're typically classified by wherever potential evaporation is greater than precipitation. So whatever water, if there's more water being evaporated into the air than that is falling from the sky, that's going to be a dry climate. And so the first classification, subclassification, is going to be arid dry climates, and you're going to think of like deserts. So those are qualified by having less than 25 centimeters of precipitation per year. So you're going to think of like really, really, really hot, dry areas. And then the second one is semi-arid. So a semi-arid climate is going to be a steppe. And then another word for steppe, those are mostly in like Europe and Asia. In America, we call them prairies or grasslands. So that's North and South America. We call them prairies or grasslands. So remember that prairies are the same as steppes, and they are semi-arid climates. And they are qualified or classified by having 25 to 50 centimeters of precipitation per year. They're dry, but they get enough precipitation for like small bushes and short grasses. So here is the steppe area or prairie slash grassland area. So you can see here in the Rockies, in Colorado, we have a prairie grassland area, and then a lot of northern Africa, the Middle East, all of Saudi Arabia, and those countries, and then most of Australia is going to be that arid climate. So, number three, temperate marine climates or moderate climates. If we remember the marine climates, they have much more mild seasons. So with these climates, we're going to think about they're humid because they're marine and they're temperate. So they have a lot of that marine air. So that's just like a lot of water in the air. And they have very mild winters. So remember that. All three of these subclassifications, they all have mild winters. Okay, so first subclass is Marine West Coast. So you're going to think of Northern California, Washington, Oregon, and then parts of Alaska. And those are the coolest marine climates. They have a lot of heavy precipitation and very thick forests. So just remember that Marine West Coast is all of those states. That's a good area. And then heavy precipitation, thick forests, and very cool marine climates. Then we have the Mediterranean climates. These are super mild. They're in Southern California a little bit, and then just that whole Mediterranean area. So like Greece, parts of Italy, I think even parts of France. So those areas are going to be Mediterranean, and they're classified with their vegetation by chaparral, which are dense shrubs and small trees and grasses, and they have a very, very mild climate. And then the last one is humid subtropical. And so we're going to think of Florida for that one. It's the warmest marine climate, a lot of precipitation, a lot of heat, and then some seasonal stability. You're going to see like storms, but between January and July, there's not much change in the climate. So those temperate marine climates are very mild. And then here are the areas. Here's the Mediterranean area. Then we've got all the way up from southern Alaska down to right in here in California. And then we've got Florida as well. That's not marked, but that's going to be a marine tropical or marine temperate. That's going to be humid subtropical. Excuse me. Okay, so number four, temperate continental. It's only found in the northern hemisphere. They're not really influenced by the oceans, by that continental standard. That's why we switch marine temperate and temperate continental, because we have those two distinguishers for marine climate and continental climate. And they are normally happen with like extreme temperatures. So that example of Fairbanks, Alaska, if you remember, that's going to be that example again for a temperate continental climate where they have really, really, really cold winters and really hot summers. And then the two subcategories are going to be humid continental, which is like the whole northeast United States, and then the subarctic, which is like a lot of Alaska and Canada. So here's a map of that. So right in here, we've got that those two different subclasses, and then that's temperate continental. For number five, we've got the polar climate. The polar climate, as you can guess, is going to be the coldest climate region. It's very, very dry because cold air holds down moisture. We know that from air fronts and pressure systems. There's a lot more pressure in cold climates. The cool thing about a lot of polar climates like tundra is that these are basically deserts. They're just frozen deserts. There's not a lot of precipitation going on in the tundra. The ice caps have a little bit more precipitation, but they're actually melting faster than they're getting or adding on to their total of precipitation and glacial growth. So that's concerning. But the two polar regions are going to be the polar ice caps and the polar tundra. So the ice caps, you're going to want to think of Greenland and Antarctica. And then the tundra, you're going to want to think of like northern Canada and Russia. And the tundra is going to be you're going to want to think of like permafrost, which is permanently frozen soil. And then there's little to no vegetation. They have like mosses, lichens, shrubs. That's going to be a quiz question. Tundra has mosses, lichens, and shrubs. And then they have like wolves and caribou also in that tundra region. So there are things living there, but it's a hard life. And so here's that polar climate. Here's Greenland, Antarctica down here, and then that tundra region right in here, up in here, all the way through here, that's tundra. And then these are polar ice caps. Okay, the last one are highlands. So, as we know from the previous lecture, highlands are their own category basically because altitude affects temperature a lot. Every kilometer you go up, you lose generally 6.5 degrees Celsius. So temperature falls as altitude increases. They are colder than the regions around them, so microclimates, if you remember. And then precipitation also increases, and that's going to be with that windward and leeward side with the rain shadow, that whole lecture that we were talking about there. Um, and then for vegetation for highlands, we want to talk about the tree line. So with the tree line, it's going to be the certain elevation where temps are too low for trees to grow. A lot of the times it's about 12,000 feet. It's between like 10,000 and 12,000 feet. So in Colorado, you can really see that. There's good evidence of that. And so here are the highlands. You see right in here, there's Colorado where we're in a highland area. And then down through here in like Chile, that's all going to be highlands. Right here, that's where Everest is right in there. So those are all the highland regions. Okay, and so this is what you're going to want to look at probably to just kind of see where all those regions are if you want to get a better look to kind of figure out what climate regions are where and how they fit up with the temperate, tropical, and polar zones. So this is just going to be a really good picture for you to go back and look at. So that is it. If you've got any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, have a great week.